Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm gonna talk about structuralism, which is the third lecture of the literary theory series. And this is a much awaited video, so without further ado, we will start. But before that, I want to say to you a very important thing, that is, human beings have a tendency to revisit the past and long for it, sometimes lament for it, but it is sometimes very harmful. For example, in case of examinations, when you are sitting for an examination and then after you uh, you know, come back from examination, and on the way back home, you surf the internet, you try to find the right answers, you try to remember the questions that came in the examination, and then if the answers come out to be correct, then you are happy. If not, then you are sad, and that really drains your brain and your heart. So after appearing for an exam, be it UGC NET, SET, GATE, or any other examinations like UPSC, um, CGL, CJSL, and examinations like that, I would recommend you do not visit the question papers again. I mean, um, for previous year's question paper practice, that's really for sure, that's mandatory, that's really a big part of preparation. But um, you know, visiting the answer keys and again and again marking your scores and trying to figure out whether you are going to crack the examination or not, what is the cutoff, and predicting the cutoffs, visiting the YouTube videos that predict cutoffs, and then being happy or sad and anxious. That is not really healthy. The time you are consuming after an examination in watching the videos that provide predictions about cutoffs, that provide, false hope and stuff like that, that is a wastage of time. Instead of that, you can invest that time to work on the mistakes that you have realized you have made in the examination hall this time, to work on your weak areas, to start over. So these competitive examinations are really unpredictable, they are difficult, it's very competitive, so do not waste your time in musing over what has happened and what's going to be the cutoff and what's going to be the right answers and stuff like that. Rather, just be prepared for the next examination. For example, many of you must have been, I have gone through it, and it's really very, I won't say harmful, but it's very distracting to ponder over what's going to be the cutoff and what's the right answer, what's the wrong. Instead of that, to wait for the final answer key to be provided in the official website, and then until that, wait and work on yourself and do something that will really help in the next examination rather than drain your energy. Okay, so rather than focusing on West Bengal set cutoffs and gate cutoffs, what's going to be the cutoff for general, what's going to be the cutoff for OBC and SC, ST, and EWS and stuff like that, I would say that you rather focus on the upcoming very, very important examination, which is UGC NET, which is going to take place in the month of June. So buckle up for that rather than um, wasting your energy on the previous ones that have already gone and you can't do anything about it. Okay, so remember that. So now let's go for the video on structuralism. Okay, before that, please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and please show your love and comment what you think about the videos that I am making, because I try to give my best over here, and I'm also a newbie over here, so your comments will really help me assess myself. So please do comment and share with your friends who are fit for these videos. Thank you so much. So let's go to the video. Structuralism is not much different from formalism, but also there are a lot of difference. Structuralism originated in France in the 1950s, and in the history of literary theory, structuralism and post-structuralism are the most revolutionary ones. So going back to structuralism tried to challenge the very notion of new criticism, and it focuses on the fact that there is an inherent structure in human behavior depending on social, political, cultural, and psychological structure. We human beings behave on a particular structure, and that is determined by our surroundings, the structure of our surroundings. It's not dependent upon our individual mindset. There is a particular structure in everything, in even in our thinking process. And there are people like Foucault, Derrida, Rola Barth, and Althusser, and Marx. Uh, there are elements of structuralism in their theories. For example, Louis Althusser merged Marxism with structuralism. Rola Barth kind of stood in the brink of structuralism and also being a voice of post-structuralism. So it is really difficult to put a line, to draw a line between structuralism and deconstruction and post-structuralism. Sometimes they really merge. So the people, the theorists, the literary figures who are talking about an inherent structure in everything, who are trying to sort of extract a structure in a thinking process or in the approach that one is taking in order to understand a text. Those people, those theorists could be taught, could be told, considered as structuralists. I will rather give you an example with this bottle. So I don't know if you can see. You can see the hexagonal structures, right? You can see some hexagonal structure. But when we zoom out, you will see there are a lot of hexagonal structures and which are a part of this whole bottle, a cylindrical structure, right? So that is the essence of structuralism, that talks about the essence of the belief of structuralism is that you cannot understand something in isolation. So you cannot study one hexagonal structure in isolation. Rather, you have to study it from the whole point of view. Okay, you have to study it from the point of view of the total thing that it is a part of. So it is, in a broader sense, a way of perceiving the world in terms of structures. So things cannot be understood in isolation. They have to be seen in the context of larger structures that they are part of. Okay, so this one hexagon cannot be understood, cannot be considered as a final sort of definition, but it should be studied in relation with the other hexagonal structures that it is a part of, and also the cylindrical structure of the bottle that it is a part of. Example, this conch shell. This is a conch shell, right? So there are a lot of patterns like this round structures, but you cannot study one round structure, one tiny this structure, and say that that is a final definition that you have to give. No, you have to study this in terms of the whole, conch shell, that the structure of the conch shell that it is a part of. I hope this is a little bit clear. So new criticism says, what does it say? It says that you don't have to look at the context, the situation, the history, the author's life to know a literary work. But structuralism is totally different from that. As a reaction to new criticism, it says that no, we have to put emphasis on the structure of a broader scenario, structure of a larger scope. Structuralism can be traced back to Ferdinand de Saussure, his seminal work of 1916 that is called Course in General Linguistics. And through the world of linguistics, he talks about structures. He says that language has two parts, signifier and signified. There are other people like Claude Lévi-Strauss who merged anthropology with structuralism, Saussure who merged linguistics with structuralism, and there is Louis Althusser who combined Marxism with structuralism. I am talking about structuralism in this way because there are sometimes questions in UGC NET that asks that what is the name of the theorist who combined structuralism with Marxism? The answer will be Louis Althusser. Okay, that is the most appropriate answer. As you can see, rather than talking about it, I decided that I will show you my notebook. So sign is a very important concept by Ferdinand de Saussure, where he talks about signifier and signified. Signifier is the name doll and signified is a concept. So there is nothing called the doll. It is just a code kind of. Okay, that whenever we say doll, an image of an arbitrary body flashes upon our eyes. That is the image of a doll, and that is the signified. So sign has two parts, signifier and signified, and any word is a base of linguistics, and the word is made of signs, and the relation between signifier and signified is arbitrary. That is very, very important. It is arbitrary. I mean, we say doll in English. When we say doll, we will see an image of a doll in our head. In Bengali, when we say putul, Putul is a language, so it's very arbitrary. If we say Putul to some non-Bengali speakers, he or she will not understand what I'm talking about. Only a Bengali will understand that, oh, okay, that person is talking about a doll. Okay, so it's very arbitrary. It depends upon what signifier is related to what signified in your brain, and that, that sort of signified and signified, the relationship between that is a part of a broader structure that you have been brought up. You have been told that that is the doll, this is a bottle, this is a laptop, okay, this is a conch shell. So these are the signifiers and the signifieds that you have been talked about, which are the part of a larger structure. Another very, very important concept of Saussure is that the binary opposition, hot, cold, thin, fat. So we know hot because we know what is cold, and when we are saying something is hot, we are meaning that it is not cold. So in our psychology, in that is very, very much hammered in our brain, that we understand things in terms of binary oppositions. This will be taken up again in the reconstruction by Derrida, who talks about presence absence. In the binary system of the computer, it's a very important part of your paper one syllabus. You must know that binary system in computers work with two digits, that is 0 and 1. Whatever is not 0 is 1, whatever is not 1 is 0. That is how the binary opposition in our mind works. Okay, talking about binary opposition, let's come to another very important concept by Saussure, which is langue and parole. So there are a lot of students face difficult times in understanding what is langue and what is parole. Let me give you one example about that. So langue is a very tiny, the sort of, what we should, is the independent part of a language. Okay, it is a system, a system of a grand structure, that is langue. I will give you an example, it will be clearer. And parole is when we use it in action, when we use it in speech. It is an application of the langue. So langue is a structure, langue is an element, parole is the use of it. For example, small, the word small, because of course then the word that is not small, that's large. So you know small, you know large. As long as you don't know the meaning of it, the sense of it, and you don't know how to use it in a speech, you know the lang only. When you are using it in a speech, like this bottle is really small, it can't hold that much of water, then it is parole. Until and unless an elemental structural sort of unit, slang, is not used in action in a speech, that is called lung, and when it is used in a speech, that is called parole. Okay, so you know the word light. In Bengali, we say alo. So suppose someone who does not speak Bengali comes across the word alo. He's saying the word alo and he does not know how to use it. So that is only lung, because does not know how to use it in a speech. As soon as he learns to use it, like এই ঘরে আলোটা খুব কম, that means in this room the there is not enough light, then that is a parole. Okay, I hope it is a little bit clearer right now. Very quickly moving on to the next theorist, whose name is Charles Sanders Peirce, and he was a very old theorist of structuralism who talks about icon, index, and symbol. Icon is a physical resemblance of a thought. Suppose your own photograph, that is an icon. Index is something like that shows a direct link between an object and the thought of it. For example, in the streets you will find that there is a picture of horn and there is a cross picture. That means no horn should be blown over here. So that is an index. And then there is symbol, when there might not be a direct link between the thought and the signified. Okay, the signified and the signified, there might not be a sort of direct relationship between that, so that is symbol. So three things Charles Sanders Peirce talks about: icon, index, and symbol. Remember that. Coming to the next theorist, whose name is Claude Lévi-Strauss, who is a very, very seminal figure in the history of structuralism. He combined structuralism and anthropology. In his seminal work called The Savage Mind, he talks about bricolage and he compares bricolaire with ingenious. It's a very important, a recurrent question asked in UGC NET. He also works with myth and structures, and uh, like Saussure, like Derrida, Claude Lévi-Strauss also focuses a lot on binary oppositions. Next, we have Vladimir Prop, who some people also consider to be a part of the formalism, Russian formalism, but I think he is more a part of French structuralism rather than Russian formalism. He tries to sort of find a sort of basic brick in mythology. What is that? So when we are building a house, of course we need to lay the bricks, and each brick results in contributing its own to the building of the house itself. Vladimir Prop, like that, in his seminal work called Morphology of the Folktales, talks about how there are only a limited number of elements that make fairy tales. Take a Russian folktale or an Indian folktale or a fairy tale from Brother Grimm's fairy tale or a Latin American fairy tale. He says that each fairy tale can be boiled down to the same structure. Okay, it's like a same skeleton over which we put muscles and flesh, which are different apparently, but in the bottom, as we go to the deep structure, we find the same structure, we find the same skeleton. He talks about 31 narratives, that's functions. 31, sorry, not, yeah, 31 functions or what he calls narratives, and 7 characters. There are 7 types of characters. Questions often come from this part. So he talks about 31 narratives or the functions of the narrative and 7 characters. What are the characters? I will look at my notebook. The villain, the dispatcher, the helper, the princess or the prize, the donor. The donor is a character who gives the hero a magical power, the hero and a false hero. It is not necessary that every fairy tale will have all the 7 characters, but in every fairy tale you will find any of this, 4 or 5 of these 7 characters. So every fairy tale can be boiled down to 31 functions. You don't have to remember all the functions, but you have to remember all the 7 characters. So every fairy tale can be boiled down to 7 characters and 31 functions. That is what Vladimir Prop is saying in his seminal work, Morphology of the Folktales. Next, we have 2 more very important structuralists. One is A.J. Grimace, who talks about actential model of language. In his seminal work, Structural Semantics, an attempt at a method, he talks about 6 actants. Okay, so those 6 actants are subject, object, helper, opponent, sender, receivers. Not much different from that of Vladimir Prop, who talks about 7 characters. Okay, so Vladimir Prop talks about 7 characters of a fairy tale, and A.J. Grimace talks about 6 important actants in a narrative. Then we will come to Gerard Genette. In the previous year, the year before that, WB SET and UGC NET questions have been asked from Gerard Genette. Very important concepts of Gerard Genette are paratext. Then there is analepsis. Analepsis means flashback. Analepsis. And there is transtextuality. Just remember these 3 concepts established by Gerard Genette. One is paratext, analepsis, that means flashback, and then there is transtextuality. In his seminal work, narrative discourse, he talks about these concepts, and he was a French structuralist, whereas Gerard Genette was a French structuralist, whereas A.J. Grimace was a Lithuanian structuralist. I am trying to cover the whole structuralism in one video very precisely, which is really difficult. So please excuse me if I leave something out, because for the sake of the video to be precise and crisp, to give you kind of a whole idea about all the major structuralists in one video, we have to leave out something or the other, and excuse me for that. Still, I will try to cover as much as I can the major areas of structuralism. Then we will come to Mikhail Bakhtin, Rola Barth. These are the 2 last structuralists I will talk about, and these are very, very important. Listen to me very carefully. Mikhail Bakhtin was Russian. He talked about some very, very important concepts. His important books are Problems of Dostoevsky's Art, Rabelais and His World, Dialogic Imagination, which includes 4 essays, Discourse in the Novel. These are very important books by Mikhail Bakhtin. Mikhail Bakhtin's concepts include polyphony, dialogism, carnivalesque, and heteroglossia. Let me talk about these concepts at length. First, let's talk about dialogism. in Bakhtin's seminal work, Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics. He talks about this concept. Dialogism, you can well assume from the word itself that it comes from the word dialogue. Dialogue, di means two, log means knowledge or language. So dialogue means two knowledges. So dialogue means when we are talking to each other, two persons are talking to each other. Monologue means one person talking. Okay. So dialogue, every conversation, every text is but a dialogue. That is what dialogism says. And dialogism connotes the fact that every text, in every text, there are contexts, there are situations, there are sort of play of thoughts in dialogue in every text. Okay, so when we are looking at any text, be it any novel or a poem or a play, of course play is a dialogue, leave it, any novel, any poem, anything, that is always a dialogue between two people or more. Okay, dialogue of concepts, dialogue of theories, dialogue of situations, dialogue of socio-political cultural scenarios. Okay, so therein comes the polyphony, the concept of polyphony. Poly means many, phony means sound. So our text is not just one sound. It is kind of a conglomeration of numerous voices squirming in it. Look at just assume a pond where there are a lot of tadpoles. Okay, they are swimming. That is a body of language, a body of text, and those tadpoles are the voices. Okay, so they are squirming. It is really important and impossible to to sort of take out one particular voice from the text. It is always a dialogue of voices that we don't know the number of. For example, take the very popular story of Cinderella. When we are looking at it, apparently there are voices of Cinderella, the prince, the sisters of Cinderella, the stepmother of Cinderella, the fairy who gives her the dress and the cart. But when we dig deeper, we find so many other contextual voices, like the voice of feminism, the voice of patriarchal system in our society, the voice of the mythical theories, the voice of, what should I say, the voice of supernatural, the voice of magic realism. So there is always a lot of voices, a lot of sounds in connection to each other. They are always in dialogue with each other. And the space that it is created thus can be called heteroglossia, which is another important concept by Mikhail Bakhtin that is mentioned in his book, in his essay, The Dialogical Imagination. The space where the dialogue is going on, the place where the polyphony takes place, the place where so many voices, so many sounds like tadpoles are going here and there, crashing with each other, making conversations with each other, never turning out to be one particular voice. That space is called the heteroglossia. Hetero means many, different. Okay, it's not monoglossia, it's not a one particular thing. It is a conglomeration of a number of voices, a numerous concepts. Next, come very quickly to the concept of carnivalesque that is mentioned in Rabelais and His World, the book that was written in 1965. It's a very important concept, and carnivalesque is something I will quote from the book itself. Carnival, some festival where the hierarchy is reversed. Okay, remember that. Carnival celebrated, I'm quoting from Rabelais in his World, Carnival celebrated temporary liberation from the prevailing truth and from the established order, as I said. It marked the suspension of all hierarchical rank, privileges, norms, and prohibitions. Okay, so Rabelais' work, The Life of Gargantua and Pantagruel, he talks about this book that can come in UGC net. So, what book of Rabelais does Mikhail Bakhtin talk about in his world, in his work Rabelais and his world? It is The Life of Gargantua and Pantagruel, and he talks about 10 carnivalesque signifiers in this book. The 10 carnivalesque signifiers are parody, death, the grotesque display, satirical humor, the curses, the oaths, metaphor, fearlessness, madness, which is a very important signifier of carnivalesque, the mask. You wear the mask to hide what you really are and to be something that you want to be without being judged. And in a carnival, no one judges. You can be whatever you want. A beggar can be masked as the king and no one will mind anything. And the interior infinite, which is a 10 signifier, that is the interior subjectivity of man with his depth, complexity, and inexhaustible resources. So carnival is a time when anyone can be anything, that is a temporary liberation from the established order. That's why carnival and the element of carnivalesque is really, really important in order to overthrow the structure. Bakhtin was always in opposition with a definite structure or a definite institution. Okay, he says that institution is not a part of who you are. You are yourself, and you have so many voices in yourself. You have so many discourses in yourself. You are a polyphonic structure in yourself. So you don't need an institution, or you don't need one particular discourse to describe you. You are enough. And he always wanted to overthrow the structure, the established order, and carnivalesque. The concept of carnivalesque can be really sort of important in that context. I hope it is clearer. Mikhail Bakhtin is a really important part of literary theory, especially structuralism, and these concepts are really important from the net point of view. Now coming to Rola Barth, the last major theorist that I will talk about in this lecture, whose name is Rola Barth and who can be associated with both structuralism and post-structuralism, also deconstructionist. He was a French structuralist, and he sort of stood at the brink of structuralism and at the rise of post-structuralism. His important books are Mythologies, Camera Lucida. It's a very rare told book, and this once came in UGC Net English. The other seminal work we all know of it, that is A Death of the Author, in 1967, a very seminal work, responding to which Michel Foucault later wrote an essay called What is an Author? So that is very important. There is From Work to Text, another work. A/Z, that is a very important work by Rola Barth. I'm talking about all the major works because in multiple times in SET and NET, questions from the major texts by Rola Barth have been asked. A/Z is a book that talks about Balzac's short story. Structural Analysis of Narrative, Writing Degree Zero. Writing Degree Zero is the first book by Rola Barth. His key concepts are readerly texts and writerly texts. Remember, writerly texts are those which are open to readers' musings, open to readers' what should I say, contemplations, and readerly texts are those that are closed texts. Okay, so readerly text does not have multiple meanings. It's totally fixed. And writerly texts are open-ended texts that might have multiple meanings. And he talks about readerly texts and writerly texts in his seminal work S/Z. He considers readerly text. He names the readerly texts as legible, Lisible, legible, and the writerly texts as scriptable, Scriptable, scriptable. Then again, he talks about 5 codes of discourse that has been asked in UGC Net the last time. I would recommend you remember this by sorry mnemonics, that is HPSSC: hermeneutic code, procreative code, connotative code, symbolic code, and cultural or referential code. So HPSSC. Okay, and this was also mentioned in the book S/Z. Now, very importantly and lastly, I will talk about the essay Death of the Author, where he says that this is a time where the author is dead and the reader is born. He says at the end of the essay that it is only by the death of the author that an active reader is born. So, in order to declare the death of the author, you need to be an active reader who will be able to extract something from the text that the author might not even have intended to mean. Okay, when you are writing something, an author is writing something, he is finishing himself and vomiting all his thoughts in the writing. When an author finally completes writing something, the author is dead. There is no sort of sense in digging the author. This is totally um, kind of similar to new criticism, but how is it different? How is it different from that of new criticism? New criticism also says that you don't need to focus too much on the author and on the context. Then why are we saying that Rola Barth is a structuralist? Why not a new critic? Because he says that a text is a tissue of quotations from numerous voices, from numerous places, and an author is recording it in the text that he is writing. And only an active reader, when an active reader picks up the book, picks up the work, reads it actively, notes it down, annotates it, only then the author is dead. And whenever, it's very ironic, I mean, I could talk about the date of the author all day. When he is continuously talking about the author, saying the author is dead, the author is dead, the author is coming back. I mean, he is continuously mentioning about the death of the author by mentioning that the death of the author, the name author comes back again and again, and that silently and ironically, subtly declares that the author is not dead. Has the author been dead, then the reader would not be there. And I know it's getting complex, but try to understand one thing. When he is saying that the birth of the reader must be at the cost of the death of the author, and when a reader is reading a text, he or she is actually writing the text by reading it. So now the reader is the author. So how is that author dead? The active reader is reading a text. The active reader is annotating whatever he or she is understanding from the text. And those annotations are the proof of the active reading. And those annotations will be read again. So now the active reader who is annotating, is the author. So the author is not dead. The author is just an entity, an empty entity that is getting filled again and again by different people. And a text is not something, not a one-dimensional figure, but it is a conglomeration of different voices, a tissue of quotations, as he says. So when you are writing a text, you are not producing something original, but you are talking about the things that you have read from different books, that you have experienced from your circumstances, that you have inherited genetically from your previous ancestors. So how can you be original? That is a different issue altogether. So a text cannot be original. An author is not original. An author does not have the right to claim that I am original and I am the authoritative body. By saying the death of the author, Rola Barth, maybe Rola Barth wanted to say that the death of an authoritative figure, not necessarily the death of the author. And by writing the essay, The Death of the Author, he is kind of ironically talking about how the author is not dead, because if the author has been dead, we would not be talking about Rola Barth as the author of the essay, Death of the Author, right? It's a very puzzling and interesting, exciting thing to talk about. Maybe I will make a different lecture on this text alone and talk about the excitement that the text connotes. So that's all for today. We have talked about structuralism, where it originated, when did it originate, and the major theorists like Ferdinand de Saussure, A.J. Grimace, Gerard Genet, Claude Lévi-Strauss, Mikhail Bakhtin, Vladimir Prop, and Rola Barth. I don't know if I've missed anyone out, but these are the things. These are the figures, and we talked about their major concepts and major texts. If you have anything else to add, if you find any mistake in this lecture, please let me know, point it out in the comment section. Get back to me for any kind of doubt that you might have. Also, my own notes that includes history of English literature, American literature, post-colonial literature, Indian English literature, literary theory, literary criticism, European literature, literary groups, literary movements, and more than 600 questions and answers from UGC NET previous years and other sources that I have compiled that made me get NET with JRF WB SET in the first attempt and get in first attempt. You can have a hold of it if you want. Just drop a message to the phone number that has been pasted below in the description box, or you can drop me an email. I will send you the details. Also, it is for 599 rupees only. You will get all the notes up to 15th February. After 15th February, you will get all the notes for rupees 699 only. So hurry up, buckle up. Best of luck for your preparation for the upcoming UGC NET exam. Like this video, share with your friends, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Bye.